Okay, so we are back from intermission when nothing went wrong.
Exactly.
And so you touched on it briefly, but do you have any thoughts of how you would attack having either a arcade or um, a long duration game going into this game jam, like setting up or
Like the process of sort of just like how to brainstorm it.
yeah, like starting the process of creating the game jam entry?
hmm So I'll talk through the kind of epic creation one first because that's the bigger scope one, just because, it's probably more stuff. So the best place to start is to just pull from things that you enjoy, things that you like. Maybe there's, you know, an idea for a story you've always wanted to talk about, or you really like one certain game and you just want to make something that's in the vein of that game. So that's a great starting point. And best thing to do is when you're brainstorming is there's something called like a free flow of ideas, where you get like a paper or like just a piece of paper, a whiteboard somewhere, and you have this initial idea of this game type you want to make, and just free associate words. Just like start throwing up words or ideas of things that go in there. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just like a bucket of power ups and like character names and like abilities and mechanics all like on this piece of paper or on this whiteboard. It's actually usually better to write it out rather than type it out, because when you're kind of actually writing, then it can ideas can form better. And just keep on keep on going there until you start to get to like the crazy and weird. Once you get to the crazy and weird is when you're getting to the good stuff. So that's when you continue on and like continue on to the crazier and crazier things in that idea. And typically what you'll find is the crazier ideas you have kind of at the end of the stream of consciousness are kind of the ones that usually make it in and are the best ones. Because you think of like the one sentence tagline for kind of any game, and it's like crazy sounding. It sounds really weird, and you need to get to that weirdness by starting with something you enjoy or a game type you enjoy, and then following it on with this kind of free association of ideas and just things, and then you'll get to like the good stuff. So like uh, I'd recommend that of just like writing this all out. Sure, you can use OneNote and stylus. That's totally fine too. But have this set aside like half an hour, not a super long amount of time, just to do all this, put all this together, and there will be some things on the paper that you'll be like, that would be pretty cool to have. And so take that stuff and then start figuring out how you're going to build that in Project Spark. And some stuff, might be a bit harder for you to build in Project Spark. So that's stuff you might have to axe. There's such thing as scope, and so some things might
Right.
be kind of outside of scope. You might be like, "Oh, it's so cool to have like this asteroid that's coming down to Earth. You can jump on it and like move on the asteroid and jump to another asteroid, which all have gravity fields." And that sounds really cool, but that's going to be really hard to get that scene done in time. Um,
Well, it all comes down to like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because you're going to have to
yeah.
spend a lot of time squeezing that orange in order to get enough juice out of it to have it be functional and have enough to drink, really.
hmm
So if it's going to take too much time to make, you're not going to have time to do anything else, then the overall quality will suffer. So I always look at it as a ratio of how good is it to how much effort and time is going to take. And you want to cram as much quality into the final result with as little time and effort as possible.
Yes. Exactly. And the other thing I'll say is just when you're kind of planning this out, the thing that makes something a game is to have some sort of end goal. There's some end objective, because your game should have some semblance of an ending, and not saying like they live happily ever after, but just something that you have to work towards, and that when you get to that point, it's the end.
It
Or
was
maybe you're
just a
working
dream.
or maybe you're working towards something else and like you get to a certain point, but there is some objective you complete to get to the end. So you get that in place, you have all these crazy ideas, and then you can start forming out like, just think through the progression in your epic story of like progression of like, all right, they go from this area to that area, or from from this arena to this arena, and chart out that kind of pathway from beginning to end. And then you can really start to approach it of like, all right, here are the things I need to build to get from point A to point B. And it's if you kind of you don't have to build them in exact order too. You can start out by, if you have just the ideas plan up, you can start out by just building point B, and then like end up by building point A, the beginning, and like build the middle parts somewhere in the middle, or start with the middle part. It's just like getting those ideas down and knowing where the pathway is from A to B is important, and also knowing like when you need to cut stuff if they're not working.
And there are like numerous videos or even articles on the uh, what is it, the plot flow where it measures tension versus time. So you want to have the climax at the end, and you have to have a flow, generally increasing tension until you get to the end. Um,
Hmm.
and that's important for a longer experience when you need a story involved. If you just have some guy walking around and then something bad happens, that is something that would be considered like the start of the tension. But if you don't have a build up to the end and it's just a static line of just punching goblins, and then you finally say, "Oh, this is the biggest goblin. Now the game's over." It's not going to cut it. Not for a 20-minute experience of punching goblins.
Hmm. And I mean, the most typical way to do that buildup of tension is just increase the difficulty as you go along, so that you really have to know the mechanics more and more. And difficulty should be done in a way where it forces the player to do the most fun thing over again. Because they should be the coolest thing you have should be the thing that the game forces you to do most often. So if you ever have problems of like, all right, I don't really know what to do to set up this area to be interesting, just think of like the most fun thing your character can do, and just be like, all right, well, let me build one thing around this most fun thing, and kind of go from there. Just like build stuff around the fun things that they can do. And as Swift Arrow CZ brings up, I also highly recommend there's a YouTube channel called Extra Credit, um, where they dole out great tips on game design. If there's a lot of videos, so if you have an idea for a game type or genre you want to build, they probably have a bunch of videos specifically about that game type. So watch all that.
I have.
Um,
Well, you don't have to watch all of it because there is like several years worth of content there.
yes.
I have pulled out several of the highlights on the .org blog section. I think I have an entire section for extra credit highlights, but I could be wrong. Um, but yeah, just search through those blogs, and I tried to pull out the ones that were most relevant to Spark in general.
Hmm.
But yeah, feel free to browse throughout there. But the funny thing is, a lot of the extra credit episodes are based on current events, so they aren't always relevant to after people watch the following weeks. But anyway,
Hmm.
um,
And also, the most important thing is good game design is completely subjective. So there's some rules, but the best thing you can do is if you don't know where to go, just follow your passion, and that usually brings you to a better place, anyways. Unless your passion is for making a terrible game.
yeah, right. Like Squirrel Simulator.
Right, exactly.
The other thing I wanted to mention was not only making the game harder, but adding complexity to it. Not the sense that it's harder to keep track of, but just there's more ways to tackle a problem.
Hmm.
So, for example, with Transistor, every time you got a new, I forget what they were called, like a code chunk, another program. Anyway, it could be used either as a passive, as an active ability, or as a augment of a passive of an active ability. So there were multiple ways you could go to attack each problem as it arose, and part of the fun was figuring out new combinations of ways to go about playing the game to get past every obstacle as it arose. If you haven't played Transistor
Yes.
yet, I strongly recommend it. It's one of my favorite games of the past 10 years.
I actually haven't played it yet, but that sounds like a good game loop right there.
And it's made by the people who made Bastion, so if you liked Bastion,
Right.
you'll love Transistor.
And Bastion was great.
So
So
for arcades,
arcades are easier if you have a good idea. Like, so I would still say with arcades, do the same thing where you kind of just have a free association of ideas, let the ideas flow, of just like what would make a fun arcade styled game. And there, it's even more important to go zany and crazy. Like the most fun arcade games make no sense whatsoever, and they're not meant to make sense. They're just meant to be like hilarious or just fun or addictive, what have you. Of course, you can kind of build arcade and story together if you want to, but if you want to go like pure arcade, um, just like do random association and see where that takes you. And the most important thing about arcade is scoping down the different mechanics you can do in a game because when you have a game that's point based, typically it's going to be a fast point based thing. There's a player can only retain so much knowledge and can only do so many mechanics at once. And I don't think I've ever seen an arcade game that has more than four different mechanics that you can do throughout it. I'm sure there are some, but I haven't seen any good arcade games that have more than four different mechanics. And like by four different mechanics, I mean four different button presses. The button presses might do this similar things, but I haven't seen anything that requires more than different button presses, basically.
I
Uh,
can't think of one.
so just keep that in mind also. Start out with just two button presses, and if you like really have a great idea, then you can have a third button press if you need to. And four, use that with caution. Like the only good examples are if you're like doing time things, like things like Guitar Hero or Charge My Laser has a great game inside of Project Spark that does that. Eyebrow. So keep it to like usually two mechanics, like something and often what it is like one thing that happens that's like happens continually and one thing that's a power up, or you can have multiple power ups that switch into that second button press.
Or you just go complete mind break mode and try to make the person press the right button when the right color icon shows up on the screen. Another charge creation
Hmm.
with shifter.
Oh, and Eric in the bakery says my idea must be really bad because I have no button presses yet. That's actually fine. If you have an arcade game that has no button pressing, that's even easier to pick up, right? So if you just have like a good mechanics to build around, zero button presses can be even better. I mean, so think about the most popular mobile game out there is like a single finger tap, and that's all it is, single finger tap. And I'm talking about Flappy Bird.
Yeah, we know.
Um, and so if it's honestly, think about that. Like think about like simple, fun, and you can add some layers on top of that if you need to.
So you can make an entire game just being a quick time event, basically.
As long as it's fun. If it's just a kind of boring quick time event, or if it's like, you're just doing tapping and nothing's really happening on screen, then that it'll lose out. Like with Flappy Bird, the reason why that succeeded is because there was like the nostalgia factor of kind of reminded people of Mario with the way it had pipes and pixel art. There was also super hard, so you have to be like really dedicated to get through and continually challenging. And it was also something that you could do with just like, you know, you just needed one finger on this phone pressing it. So it was also very easy for anyone to pick up.
So do you think a game that didn't have a solid idea for an arcade could win the category? Like, let's say it was a twin stick shooter. Could a twin stick shooter be good enough that it would win over something that had a great idea?
Hmm. If it was a twin stick shooter and there was something else in there that was just like, great original idea, I think like for a twin stick for something like a tried and true genre that's been done many times before, I would say probably for it to win, there's gotta be something that's just different in there or new, just something that makes it like just makes it feel special and original. So if it's for instance a twin stick shooter with zombies, it's been done so many times before, and it's not to say that you shouldn't and don't make a twin stick shooter with zombies, because you could do something where it's like really fun, where you have like crazy different zombie types that you've like never kind of played against before. But yeah, I would say if it's like twin stick shooter that's just like every other twin stick shooter out there, then that might have a much harder time of winning.
Because you can spend a lot of time making new enemy types or new weapon types, but I'm not sure if you'll ever be able to break away from the feeling of it being a twin stick shooter.
Well, think about this. What if you made, for instance, you like your weapon, like one of your main weapons was a gravity gun, and you could, or like black hole gun, or so like you would it kind of changes the mechanics a bit for you, because you have this gravity gun where you fire it and it like brings all these zombies in, and then you could like use another weapon to like decimate them in one blow, or like teleport gun where you shoot at one zombie and it teleports them randomly somewhere else. So like the mechanics really do matter in it, where if it's like a game where it's twin stick shooter, zombies, guns, you could still make it fun.
could still be fun, but could it still win over something that had like a great, unique idea? Let's say that
Yeah,
iBrawl didn't exist before this game jam, and iBrawl was one of the competing entries. Could a twin stick shooter win over iBrawl?
I would say yeah. I would say if it was done really well, I would say it could win over something like iBrawl. You know, the fun factor is going to be definitely be an important part of judging. So if that has a phenomenal fun factor, phenomenal replayability, great polish throughout, it could definitely overcome some more, an original arcade. As long as like this, it just needs to add something new to the mix. I think that's probably what most judges will be looking for. It's just like it just feels cool and fun.
But what about the originality factor? Where let's say that Charging My Laser comes back to make Invasion 3 and it's a side scroller similar to Invasion 2.
Hmm.
Would that deduct from his originality score because it is something that was similar to what we had seen before, or is it just because it's a whole new game and he did everything from the ground up again that it's still totally considered original? He gets full points for that.
Again, it's all about how it's executed. If you have a game like Invasion 3 that is kind of just the same mechanics as Invasion 2 but in different settings with kind of the same kind of enemy types, then originality would be something that would definitely suffer. But if you took that same idea of that, 2D side-scrolling ship-based shooter, shoot 'em up, and you had really different weapon types, really different enemy types, things that just fundamentally changed how you played it, then I would say that might get a high originality score if it just really did bring something new to the mix. It's all about how it's executed on.
So if it was fun enough, you would think it was original even if it wasn't.
Well, what do you count original? What do you count as original? If it's like the same, if it's the same setting, but like everything, all enemies are new, all guns are new, would you say that's original?
No, because it would be based on it would basically be like, well, it depends on what we're saying. Same new weapons, right? Because you're always going to be shooting from one direction to another, left to right, or right to left, or up to down. However you wanted to set that one up.
Or I mean, you could be shooting in any direction though, honestly. Like
Right. Well,
he could make like a spinning like spiraling shooting gun, for instance, and
that's
like
true.
that would change the fundamentals of play.
Right. If he was to do that, then that would be different than always shooting straight to the right, and then
Hmm.
sometimes having what do they call it, homing missiles.
Hmm.
But if he's if it's just gonna be different variations of which angle it shoots at, or well, without having direct control over it, I think that's not different enough to be considered original. But if you were to have like a different like, thumbstick direction to the shooting angle, that would be different enough for me. If you had manual control over which angle you shot at.
Right. I think like getting to some things that are being talked about in chat where Wolf Venom asks, is there an original idea left these days? I would say there are not many original ideas left, but there are original combinations of ideas left. And I think that's where kind of it comes in. It's hard to talk about originality when you just say like, all right, well, it's a sequel, so it's not original. Because a sequel could be so different than the original and, take some mechanics of what worked in the original, have completely new mechanics paired with it, and then, you put five mechanics together and you've now created a totally new, unique game. And so there's nothing new under the sun that's by itself new under the sun. But I keep on seeing stuff that are new under the sun by combining different things together. Like a good example is last year there was like a slew of suddenly games that came out where it was a simulator and you were a weapon shop owner. So it's like simulator games have been done to death. Games where you like inventory management has been done to death, and like RPGs where there's a shop owner that you buy stuff on has been done to death. But they added they reversed something or added a new element in there where you play as that weapon shop merchant and you now give out the items to the RPG travelers, and it's now resource management with that weapon shop. It kind of changed it and it made this totally original feeling thing.
I have a feeling that every judge is going to view originality different for each game that they judge.
That's true.
So even out eventually based on how much effort the creators did into being novel in certain areas. Maybe if it isn't novel the entire way, like obviously nothing's gonna be entirely novel, but how big of an impact that novelty has on the level will impact the originality of the score
Hmm.
or the
I
scores
yeah,
in
I,
general.
I, I agree with that. You know, the thing you do have to think about is at the end of the day, with this game jam and your entry to it, you are going to be judged by a panel of judges that consists of Team Dakota members and community volunteers. So their judging will be subjective. You know, we're going to look and make sure that there's no judge who's obviously showing favoritism towards any creator, but it will still be subjective based on what they like and what they view as fun and what they view as original. So there is always there's always some variety there. But like you said, the hope is by having the more and more judges you have, it kind of averages out.
All right, do you have any other thoughts on the game jam the first week goes?
No, but I had a question for you and also kind of everyone in chat is, I think the two of us and a lot of people in chat are kind of giving out words of wisdom, and that's because we've all most people here have designed games for a long time in Spark, and you do learn real industry design mechanics from there. So I was kind of curious. I wanted to ask you the question of like, what are the things you learned in Spark that kind of helped you think about designing games better? Like a specific like lessons learned through Spark that you've
So
had.
with melee combat in general, the length it takes for the action to take place matters a lot. And with Spark, the issue has been that the melee mechanic takes a long time. Like pretty much evenly throughout the entire animation, it's all in real time. Whereas in most games, if you look, they'll focus a few extra frames on the impact animation. But with Spark, they don't know when the impact is actually going to be happening, because the sword is going almost like 360 degrees around you. So one of the things I've noticed is in Spark, it isn't worth doing melee unless you do something totally custom, whether it be like becoming a whirling dervish that similar to the whirlwind barbarian in Diablo 3. But I would generally just stick to shooting stuff. That's my unless you can pull off a turn-based combat, in which case the animations don't really matter because they're just superficial.
I would say you can definitely make melee fun. I mean, you don't like this game, but I think Swordman and Conquer is shows how fun melee can be.
Well, that comes down to the whirlwind mechanic that I just mentioned.
Yeah, that's true. Whirlwind mechanic does feel really good.
So if you just spin around hitting swords, then again it's superficial and you're just doing a bump mechanic at that point.
Hmm.
So that'd be fine. Um, Also, side scrollers, 2D levels are easier to make than 3D levels because there's
Yes.
so much more that you can put on a screen, have it framed the way you want the player to see it, and they will always experience it. Oh, excuse me. They will always experience it in that manner. And I was actually thinking about this when I was writing up something for the game jam, whereas in old classic games, they would frame the shot and actually have you transition between two different frames and no actual sliding between them other than the switching from one region to another. This was like most prominent in like Link to Legend of Zelda 2, where you could actually, if you pressed the pause button while it was shifting between these two frames, you would teleport from one side to the other. Anyway, um, as a result of this, with 2D, it's easier to set up, it's easier for you to control, and it gives the player a much more polished experience than if you throw things on the ground in just 3D, just to fill up space.
Hmm. Like I'm just for fun entering the game jam. It's obviously not going to be judged, but
Oh, I'll judge it.
Thomas Thomas and I are working on something, and it has a lot of 3D platforming areas. Making like a good 3D platforming space or level is so hard compared to a good 2D platforming level. Like you have to think through every angle where a user can exploit things to get to areas that they should never get to. It really amplifies the complexity 20 times over. And so, because of that, I've been working on just like one factory level now for, weeks, and it's like halfway there because I mean, it's not like spending 8 hours a day on it for weeks, but it's still like I try something and then I play through it and I'm like, oh, this doesn't work whatsoever because I can like just get around it this way.
The thing that comes to mind with that was in Alice Madness Returns. Have you played that game?
Yeah.
So it's a 3D platformer in many parts, but it will actually force the camera's perspective to be a 2D side scroller in certain puzzle areas because there's no way for the camera to actually see the distance when you're or actually have to provide the information to the player to know how to proceed through that puzzle if they're in their normal 3D action adventure camera.
hmm
So you might be able to find out ways to um, help your player through the platforming if sometimes you limit even if the entire game isn't in 2D, if you just sometimes limit the puzzles to be 2D.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. That's a great thing to do. And we even did that in Conker's Big Reunion in that brewery area. We had some kind of forced perspectives on him where just to kind of show you, you only go this way, don't go other ways.
And as far as like little exploit things that you come up with, you can actually make those into features. Like if you find the person got somewhere that they weren't supposed to go, just make a little note that comes up on the screen saying you weren't supposed to be here. And then the player will feel accomplished for having found something that you put in there, knowing was there, and they get they get that recognition from you, even if it's indirectly.
The worst part about making a 3D platformer, though, is the player getting somewhere they weren't meant to be and them not being able to get out of it.
Yeah, and then posting on NeoGAF the screenshots of the areas you're not supposed to be in.
Yeah. We had this great user with Conker's Big Reunion, like get to all these places they weren't meant to be able to get to. And we left them open. We thought it'd be fun to just leave those open so people could kind of remix and add stuff there. But this one player who did amazing things where they like got into like the wooded area and lured the Teddy's chainsaw boss all the way to the like cock and plucker and then like did the boss battle there while trying to put out Birdie's fire. It's like amazing stuff like that he's able to do.
Well, you could have just done that in a remix. Saved yourself a lot of time.
Yeah, but no, this guy spent like hours just in play mode going through all these exploits because he was having so much fun doing it.
Well, hey, whatever floats their boat, right?
Yeah.
So, could you tell us a little bit more about like the level that you and Thomas are working on?
Yeah, it's I've been working on this idea for a while in Spark where it's been more in my head. I've been working on it rather than in game. So I wanted to at least for the game jam get like the first few levels out for it. It's yeah, I will basically what we should have by the time of the game jam's finish is the beginning of it, the very first village you get to, and the very first quest line to kind of um, rescue the elder of the village, if you will.
So,
And so
Champion
like
Quest.
it's very different from Champion's Quest. I'm keeping it vague like that for a reason. It's much more in the vein of it's much more comical, I'll say.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll look forward to seeing that, and not everybody else's entry, because you're gonna make something so much better than everybody else.
No, we're not. We're never not going to make it. It's not going to be as good as you think.
Oh, you couldn't see the sarcasm in my face or my voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No, I
it was
did.
just on screen, so you saw me roll my eyes. Anyway, um, there is one more thing I wanted to talk about. So the game jam and the announcement that everything has become free has brought in some new people, which is great for the community.
Mhm.
But they've also seen us talking about things like Spark shutting down in 6 months or whatever, and they took that kind of the wrong way. So just a quick rehash to the people that are newer here. Um, what is the outlook for Project Spark?
The outlook is as long as people continue to create in Spark, we'll keep the doors open. That's basically the outlook of it. I mean, we so what we've seen since launch, I can kind of I can't give you the specific numbers, but what I can tell you is the amount of people who are using Project Spark daily, which is like the main thing we look at every single day in Project Spark, that has gone up. We have the amount of levels that have been uploaded has gone up. The amount of plays of UGC of content has gone up. The only real thing that's gone down is the average user logs on less times per day than before. You know, both of them are above 1 times per day, but the average user um, logs on less times per day than were before, and that makes a lot of sense because we no longer have a treasure trove that would make them need to log in, a lot of times per day. So with that said, like that means all the numbers are pretty much up except for the one that we expected to go down a tiny bit. So with that in mind, I mean we're happy because the community seems to be alive, and that's really at the end of the day that's all we want. We want this thing to continue to live on with the community, and as we push out updates here and there, we are working on our next update, which will have a slight amount of new content. We'll have some bug fixes, and that's kind of how we're going to move forward with pushing out updates when we need to, when issues arise that we need to address. And as long as we have a healthy community, then there's no reason for us to ever shut down Project Spark. And it looks like that's how it's going to be. So I think there's nothing really to be worried about.
Are you satisfied so far with the participation of the game jam?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I knew when we put this together, each of our game jams kind of hit on different things. So we knew this game jam would not be for everyone because it really does hit on people who are interested in the gaming industry. Most of the prizes are geared towards helping you get a foot into the industry. We do have prizes, the really cool one about getting achievements in your UGC. That's more recognition. So if you don't want recognition and if you don't really want or interested in the industry, then it's not as big of a draw to you. So what we thought we'd get, and it appears to be correct, is the people who are really great aspiring developers who are building stuff, and they're going to get to the end, they're going to upload it, and they're going to look back and realize, oh, I am not just an aspiring developer, I'm an actual developer, and that's why we call it the Developers Game Jam.
Speaking of which, have we heard anything from True Love Games recently? The ones who made what was it, Eden's Quest? No, the Hunger
Oh,
Games,
Olden
like
Story.
Olden Story, yeah.
Olden Story. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. I forgot that was True Love Games' name. I have
Because this seems like this would be like right
recently,
up their alley.
yeah, recently I talked with DD Live from there. I'm not sure if they know about this game jam. We'll make sure they know. We haven't even started the full kind of communication push behind this developers game jam yet even. So we expect um, more and more people to be aware of this and more people to kind of come in and try and build something in Project Spark.
But those who haven't yet joined the game jam, there's still plenty of time for them to pitch in and make an entry that's not even just competitive, but also possibly the winning entry.
For sure.
Because actually, I've been talking to a lot of the collaborations, and some of them have just barely started scripting out their concept. So, even if you haven't started working on a level yet, you're probably on about par with most of the collaborations.
Hmm.
On that note, will we see you guys for a stream tomorrow? Because I noticed you guys have started doing Thursday streams again.
We have, yeah, we've decided to do our Thursday streams. We, I think, like, we're just planning to keep on doing them. We have a new unique thing coming up each week. Tomorrow we're actually going to be showing off SparkShare, which is by community member Psycho, to show that off and kind of the cool things to do with it. So yeah, we'll do that as a special stream next Thursday. I'm pretty sure we'll have a stream Thursday after too.
And so that's right. I remember hearing you guys are going to be doing the what's it called? HoloLens, right? You're going to be showing that off, right? Integration with Project Spark, right?
That would be awesome. If that ever did happen, I don't even know how one could show that off in a stream though, without the special HoloLens cameras.
Right. So you just have to get that because I mean they're not using it for E3 at the moment, so you guys should be okay with it.
That's true. Yeah, I just have like 3 of the cameras right behind me right here. That's how we roll.
And then Friday you're doing the UGC as well.
Oh yes, as always, every Friday we play your UGC.
And Tuesdays you're not doing the tutorial streams anymore, but you have been pushing out the tutorial videos on YouTube.
Yes, and besides that, we are working on a tutorial module that starts from first time you open up Project Spark all the way to completing your first game, whichever first game that is.
And this is on YouTube, not in game in Project Spark, not in the game.
No, on YouTube.
Right. What was the other thing I was going to talk about? Oh, you did another concept art dump onto
Oh
Pinterest.
yeah. hmm Yeah, go check that out. We put in. I mean, we showed off a lot of really cool things that are the idea of concept art is to put concepts on the page of just ideas of where your game could go. So our concept artists explored a lot of different areas where Project Spark could go. Whether it was a lot of them were really early on in development, but so we thought it'd be really cool to just start sharing those. Our concept artists are great artists, and this stuff is stuff that I have as backgrounds for my desktops. So we thought we'd just share that out for things you can have as cool desktop backgrounds, and they're also kind of really cool to think of like, oh, this thing almost became this other thing. Like the cool thing is for a while the most recent one, for instance, is we showed off kind of like really early on we explored wood elves as like kind of the creatures of Verdia, and we that didn't pan out, but you'll actually see so much of the influence in those elves, like the really, early on those elf designs really influenced our Codian designs in the end.
And there is one question that's been answered a million times, but it's from a newer member, so we'll go over it again. Uploading content into Project Spark, is it a thing? Will it be a thing?
It'd be really cool for us to add that in the future. For now, if you're on PC, you can upload your own images through this workaround. It's not really supported by us, so it's not a user-friendly workaround. But actually, SparkShare makes it a lot easier. So you can get your own images into Project Spark, but like your own 3D models, your own sounds and music. That's something you can't do right now. It would be cool for us to add that in there. So that's not off the table. But I can say it's not something that's going to happen. It's not something that's going to happen soon. But we do hope to definitely one day get it in there.
But it's not something you guys are going to say you're actually working on until it's just about ready. We've gone over this a few times, so I think it's worth repeating.
Yeah, we do want to give our community more information about what our team is working on, though. So I think like once we get to the point where we know, if we say, all right, say for instance, if we were to work on importing of models and music and such, I think once we would get to a point where we knew what it was going to look like, then we'd probably tell the community early on, just give a heads up, like, hey, we're working on this. Also, it's always a great point. The earlier you put it out, the more you can get feedback in. And we really want to adopt that moving forward of just, early on, we don't have anything to hide. So early on telling you the things that our team is working on.
And for those people who are having difficulty realizing the integration, the uploading of custom images, if you're able to follow the instructions I posted on .org, that's one way. There's also another way. SparkShare will allow you to do so when you're uploading the assemblies through that platform.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you guys did a live stream videotaping the recording every step. So if they follow that video, then they'll be able to do step by step watching you do it every step.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, search on YouTube for importing images in Project Spark. It's about a 30-minute video, but it brings you through the whole thing.
So if there's any part of it that you were mistaken when you were trying to go through it yourself, you'll actually see them doing each part of it, and it should be foolproof, unless it's some kind of platform issue that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and on that note, I think there's one last thing I want to say, and that has been that there have been more users streaming Project Spark lately on their own channels again. So there was originally, when we started Project Spark community, it was pretty much 24/7 that we were streaming. Well, so at least somebody in the community was streaming.
I
Um,
remember that.
but now it's a little more sporadic, but users have actually started to stream again. So I know Swift Arrow has been doing it. Doobie Snacks has been streaming. Um, Wirt Andrew had been doing his own series for.
Zfools and Defco stream often also.
Well, that I know Zfools does, but for some reason I follow Defco and it's still not sending me alerts to when he starts stream. So I'm like, what's going on? But I'll
Oh.
yeah. So I've been a little annoyed by that. Been trying to get his alerts to show up. I haven't clicked it to send me the alerts. Anyway, um,
Yeah, if you have an Xbox, it's really easy to stream to Xbox, and like it's really fun. I've streamed many times before, and when you're streaming, it's great to like when you're building stuff, it keeps you really motivated to keep on building stuff because you know people are watching, so you get so much more done because you're streaming it. So you're like, all right, I can't give up. I got to keep on building. But also you have community members who will jump in and like give you suggestions too. So it's a really great way to build.
yeah, I mean, if you are streaming, then feel free to drop a link over on .org if you're streaming Spark, that is. And I'm sure I know Lantos streams his UGC thing on Thursdays. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if he's going to do it this week because it turns out he was rather ill this past week.
Oh
Um,
no.
the bug went around to his family and then went around to him.
Uh,
So, um, for those who want to stream on this channel, if you're on a PC, then you can just hit up Mescad and he'll be glad to give you a stream key. Um, and also, that reminds me, we do have the ability to host you on this channel, but um, I guess we could. It's not gonna be terribly useful if people. It used to be that there was always people sitting in this channel, right?
hmm
Like, yeah, but not so much anymore because it hasn't been. It's used like once or twice per week, but unless more people want to start using it, which again they're free to. Do you have any parting words, Brian?
Keep on trucking, people. That's all I gotta say. Community is strong, and it's looking awesome. And also, yeah, I wish everyone luck on whatever they make for the game jam.
Okay then. Well, yeah. Good luck to everybody on the game jam. We're 1 week in, so make sure you're trucking along, as Brian would put it, and keep making progress on your game jam entry. Even if it's incremental each week, just make sure that you're not neglecting it. Just keep working on it. And again, team up. There's some really good teams out there. So I'm
Or
not
people
saying
looking for teams too.
and people looking for teams. So I'm not saying that somebody like Deleted with Vector Shadow couldn't win it by himself. I'm just saying I would be intimidated to make my own game against those collaborations that are currently established. And
Yeah.
on that note, we will see you guys next week, and we'll see you guys on stream tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right, night, everybody.